The old wing of St. Hilaire's College was never meant to be used anymore. The pipes hissed, the windows rattled even on windless nights, and the smell of damp stone crept beneath the paint no matter how often the janitors tried to bleach it away. Students called it the catacombs, though no one could quite remember who had started the name. On Tuesday nights, however, the lights still burned in one classroom, room 312, where Professor Maren held his final year course on history of thought and philosophy of time. Most students avoided that slot. Others dropped after the first week, muttering about the professor's strange lectures that seemed to blur dream and history. But tonight, 7 students remained. Lydia Blake sat near the front, her notebook open, her pen poised above the margin. She told herself she stayed in the class because she wanted the credit, but secretly, she was fascinated by the man himself. Professor Maren was old, impossibly old, his voice gravelly and calm, his gestures deliberate, as though each word carried a weight he'd been guarding for decades. When the clock on the wall ticked past 10, he began his lecture in the usual way, slowly, almost ritualistically. Time, he said, is not a river, but a room. We do not move through it. We remain inside it. The door only closes when we understand where we are. The chalk squealed across the blackboard. Lydia winced. Behind her, someone stifled a laugh. She turned the page of her notebook and tried to focus, but something about the rhythm of the chalk struck her as wrong. It wasn't a steady scrape, but a pulse like breathing. Maren's hand was moving, but too smoothly, too quickly. Then she realized the chalk was still writing even after his hand stopped. The professor was facing them, speaking about Kant and circular time. Yet on the board, white letters unfurled by themselves. We never left. At first, Lydia thought it was a trick, maybe a reflection, maybe a prank by one of the boys in the back. But when she blinked, the words had sunk into the chalkboard like carvings. Maren paused mid-sentence. His eyes flicked toward the board, then back to the class. "Continue your notes," he said quietly. "Please." The room seemed to contract, the air thick with something metallic. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder. One of them popped, showering fine glass dust. The door creaked. No wind, yet the papers on the desks rustled. Lydia's phone vibrated, no signal. She wasn't the only one. The others murmured, holding up their screens. No bars. Mine too. Wi-Fi's gone. Professor Maren exhaled. "Do not leave your seats." But panic spread fast. A boy near the window, Jack, she thought, pushed his chair back and grabbed the door handle. It didn't move. He twisted harder, slammed his shoulder into it. Nothing. Another student tried the emergency exit at the back. It led into the same hallway. Then again the same hallway. No matter which door they opened, they returned to room 312. Lydia felt the nausea of looping dreams, that soft tilt in the stomach when you wake, but the room doesn't change. Professor Maren stood motionless at the center. "Sit down," he said. "You shouldn't have come tonight." "Professor, what's going on?" someone cried. The class of 82 never dismissed. No one moved. He turned toward the board. The chalk rose again, trembling in the stale air, and scrawled beneath the first message. The bell never rang. A faint sound echoed from somewhere deep below them, a bell toll. Far away, but sharp enough to make Lydia's chest tighten. She remembered hearing stories about the West Wing bell tower, condemned years ago after a fire gutted the upper floors. But the bell had been removed, hadn't it? Her pen slipped from her hand, rolling to the floor. When she bent to pick it up, she saw something that froze her completely. Under the desks, shadows were pooling. Not the soft darkness of ordinary light, but something thicker, as if spilled ink were spreading from beneath each student's shoes. Maren noticed her staring. "Don't look at them," he whispered, but the shadows were moving, stretching upward, fingers forming from the edges. Lydia gasped as one brushed her ankle, cold as water from a grave. Jack bolted for the door again. He screamed as his hand sank into the knob, flesh melting into the wood like wax. When the others pulled him back, half his palm was gone, leaving behind a shape that still twitched. The lights flickered once more, and the classroom was no longer just a classroom. The walls pulsed, slick with moisture. The blackboard rippled like the surface of a pond. The smell of rot filled the air. Desks elongated, warped into pews, and in the far corner, Lydia thought she saw figure students sitting in silence, translucent, eyes hollow and gray. "The class of '82, Maren said softly. They stayed to finish their lesson. The fire took their bodies, but not their attention." He stepped closer to the blackboard. The words there shimmered, each letter dripping faintly with chalk dust and something darker. "They thought knowledge was eternal," he said. "They were right. Too right." He turned back toward them. In the sickly light, Lydia saw that the professor's skin was flaking like old paper. His veins were black, his fingertips dusted with ash. "Every 40 years, he murmured, the lesson resumes." The floor shook. A sound like distant whispering filled the air, dozens of voices murmuring in rhythm, all repeating the same phrase. "Take notes. Take notes. Take notes." Her notebook lay open before her. Her hand moved without permission, scribbling words she didn't understand. Each line shimmered faintly before burning into the page. When she tried to stop, the pen wouldn't drop. It was glued to her fingers. Her wrist cramped, bones crackling with pain. Still she wrote. Across the room, others were doing the same, faces blank, eyes white, their pens scratching in eerie unison. Professor Maren walked among them, his expression calm, almost sorrowful. "You can't leave until it's finished," he said. "The lesson must be recorded." Lydia forced herself to look at the page. The words she'd written weren't hers. "We never left. The door is open both ways." The lecture continues. Tears blurred her vision. The room grew colder. In the corner, one of the ghostly students stood, turning toward her. Its mouth opened wider than it should, and a low moan spilled out, not sound, but vibration, like a memory of pain. Its skin was burned, flaking, yet its eyes fixed on Lydia's. She screamed and threw the notebook aside. The moment it left her hand, her chest constricted a sharp pain, as if the act itself tore something from her. The shadows surged, reaching. Maren's voice thundered, suddenly ancient, echoing from the walls themselves. "You shouldn't have come." The lights exploded. For a second, there was only red bright, wet red, as if the entire room had been submerged in blood. Then silence. When campus security broke down the door the next morning, the old wing was quiet. The hallway smelled faintly of smoke, though nothing had burned in decades. Room 312 was spotless. No blood, no broken lights, no students. Only 7 notebooks, stacked neatly on the first desk, still warm to the touch. Each was filled with pages upon pages of dense handwriting lectures on philosophy, time, and the illusion of death. None matched any known student. Professor Maren was nowhere to be found. His name disappeared from the faculty records that same week, as if he'd never taught there. But those who had passed by the old wing after midnight swore they could still hear chalk scraping faintly behind the locked door. Sometimes, if you pressed your ear to the wall, you could make out words. Not quite voices, more like the echo of them. The class of '82 never dismissed. And, fainter still, another sound, pens scratching across paper, keeping time with a heartbeat that wasn't yours.